Cool. Let's move on to the next question. So the next question is, in the sentence, I gave her a book, the indirect object is um, gave what? A book to whom? Her. So the correct answer, the indirect object here is her, certainly. Right. Now let's move on to the next question. Let's discuss the next question. So can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. What's the next question?
So the next question, I just gave you a text file, and I just gave you a text, and it has a new set of questions we are discussing from there. So, which of the following is not correct regarding the sentence? The man who saw the dog ate a banana. So, which of the following is not correct regarding this sentence? The man who saw the dog ate a banana. Now, the man who saw the dog is a complex noun phrase. That's correct. The man is the subject. I don't think so. There and ate a banana is a verb phrase. That's correct. Who is a relative pronoun? Okay, that might also be correct. So the incorrect statement is the man is the subject, because this is not a subject. The subject is actually the man who saw the dog is the subject as well as the complex noun phrase. Now, I want you to elaborate on who as a relative pronoun, what relative pronoun really means, what does this include, what does relative pronoun include, and the question itself.
In the sentence, the man who saw the dog ate a banana, who is a relative pronoun. A relative pronoun is used to link a clause to a noun or pronoun, providing more information about it. In this case, who introduces the relative clause, who saw the dog, which gives us more details about the man. Relative pronouns like who, whom, whose, which, and that help to connect additional information to a noun or pronoun mentioned earlier in the sentence.
Okay, let's move on to the next question. It has two assertions. First, that in an exocentric construction, in the group of words which form the construction, one of the words is functionally equivalent to the group as a whole. In an exocentric construction, one of the words is equivalent to the group as a whole is not a correct statement, because in an exocentric construction, none of the words is, it cannot act as a head. Now the next assertion is that in an endocentric construction, in the group of words which form the construction, none of the words is functionally equivalent to the group as a whole. So this is also not correct, because in an endocentric construction there is a word, uh, which is the head of that construction. Now, tell me if anything is wrong with my explanation.
Your explanation is mostly accurate, but there is a slight mix-up in the definitions of exocentric and endocentric constructions. In an endocentric construction, one of the words within the group acts as the head, which is the main component that determines the grammatical nature of the whole construction. For example, in the noun phrase, the big house is the head, and the big is providing more information about it. On the other hand, an exocentric construction does not have a single word within the group that functions as the head. Instead, the construction as a whole acts as a single unit. For example, in the compound word pickpocket, there is no single word within it that acts as the head of the compound. The meaning of the whole is different from just the sum of its parts. So your understanding of exocentric constructions is correct, but the explanation for endocentric constructions needs adjusting. In an endocentric construction, one of the words is indeed functionally equivalent to the group as a whole.
All right, let's move on to the next question. So the next question, may is a situationizer, modal verb, time adverb, or a pronoun? So may, what is may? May is certainly a modal verb. Now explain to me what modal verb really is.
A modal verb is a type of auxiliary verb used to express possibility, necessity, permission, or ability. Modal verbs modify the meaning of the main verb in a sentence. For example, in the sentence, she may come to the party, may is a modal verb indicating the possibility of her attending. Other common modal verbs include can, will, should, and must.
Can, will, should, and must. And may is, it modifies the main verb because in the sentence, she may come to the party. Come, the verb, the main verb is modified by the modal verb, the presence of the modal verb may, which indicates that what is possible or impossible. So tell me if anything is wrong with my explanation, and do not make it elaborate because I am lacking time.
Your explanation is correct. Modal verbs like may do modify the main verb and express possibilities, among other things.
All right, let's move on to the next question. So, which of the following is not a constraint proposed by Ross? So, Ross proposed the complementizer placement constraint, complex noun phrase constraint, coordinate structure constraint, sentential subject constraint. So, I think complementizer placement constraint, right? So Ross proposed the complex noun phrase constraint, coordinate structure constraint, sentential subject constraint, WH islands. There was also something called left branching constraint or something like that. And also one more thing.
Yes, you're correct. The complementizer placement constraint is not one of Ross's constraints. The others, like the complex noun phrase constraint, coordinate structure constraint, and sentential subject constraint, are part of Ross's constraints. Sorry, I'm having issues right now. Could not understand what you said.
So we can say that also, yeah, the WH island constraint and also a left branching constraint. There was also some other constraint. So can you elaborate? Like, can you tell me what other constraints apart from these three? The complex noun phrase, coordinate structure, sentential subject. What other constraints were proposed by Ross?
Certainly. Besides the complex noun phrase constraint, coordinate structure constraint, and sentential subject constraint, Ross also proposed the WH island constraint and the left branch constraint. The WH island constraint deals with the restrictions on W8 questions, while the left branch constraint concerns the difficulty of certain structures involving left branching elements.
So, what do these three, the complex noun phrase, coordinate structure, sentential subject, what do these constraints explain?
These constraints explain limitations on syntactic structures in sentences. The complex noun phrase constraint restricts how complex noun phrases can be extracted from or moved around in sentences. The coordinate structure constraint limits the movement or extraction of elements from coordinate structures, like phrases joined by and or. The sentential subject constraint addresses how certain sentences with complex subjects can be problematic for extraction or movement of elements.
Let's move on to the next question. So, which of the following is not a parameter? Not a parameter. Parameter. So, head parameter, pro drop parameter.
The options given were null subject, prodrop, head, and case. The correct answer is case. The parameters often discussed in syntax are null subject and prodrop, which involve whether subjects can be omitted or not. Head refers to the central word in a phrase, not a parameter itself. Case refers to the grammatical category that indicates the role of a noun or pronoun in a sentence, but it's not typically classified as a parameter in the same sense.
Now, which of the following was not a type of transformation in the aspects model? So, in the aspects model, which one of the following is not a type of transformation? So, it's not a type of transformation in the aspects model. Now, movement, deletion, substitution, adjoining is not one of the transformations in the aspects model. So can you elaborate what transformations are there in the aspects model?
In the aspects model, the primary transformations are movement, deletion, and substitution. Movement involves changing the position of elements within a sentence. For example, moving an object to the beginning to form a question. Deletion involves removing certain elements from a sentence to simplify it, like dropping redundant words. Substitution involves replacing one element with another, such as replacing a noun with a pronoun. Adjoining is not a transformation in the aspects model. It refers to combining elements, but isn't classified as a transformation within this model.
So the transformations in the aspects model are addition, deletion, substitution, and movement. Now, can you exemplify these four transformations mentioned in the aspects model?
Actually, the aspects model specifically includes movement, deletion, and substitution. Addition is not traditionally considered a transformation in this model. Here's a brief explanation with examples for the three transformations. 1. Movement. Changing the position of elements in a sentence. For example, in the sentence, she is reading a book. If you want to form a question, you move the auxiliary verb, is she reading a book? 2. Deletion. Removing elements from a sentence. For example, in the sentence, he said that he would come, the word that can be deleted. He said he would come. 3. Substitution. Replacing one element with another. For example, in the sentence, Lisa saw the movie. She liked it. The noun the movie is substituted by the pronoun it. Addition isn't specifically listed as one of the transformations in the aspects model.
All right, let's move on to the next question. House roof is an example of hyponmeronymy, actually. So, holonymy and meronymy. Holonymy explains, holonymy explains a whole, and meronymy explains the part of that whole. So, house roof, roof is a part of house, and that is why the relation between house roof is that of holonymy and meronymy. Is that correct?
Actually, the relationship between house and roof is best described as meronymy. In meronymy, one term refers to a part of the whole or a component of something. So roof is a part of a house, making it a meronymic relationship. Holonymy is the opposite, where one term refers to the whole that includes the other term. For example, house would be a homonym to roof.
Now, the next question has two assertions. First assertion: connotation and denotation are two principal methods of describing the meanings of words. The second, denotation, refers to the wide array of positive and negative associations that most words naturally carry with them, whereas connotation is the precise literal definition of a word that might be found in a dictionary. Well, the second assertion is not correct. The first is indeed correct, that connotation and denotation are the true principal methods of describing the meanings of words, but connotation refers to the wide array of the positive and negative associations that most words carry with them, whereas denotation is the precise literal definition of a word which might be found in a dictionary. So, the first assertion is correct, but the second assertion is not correct. So, tell me, is anything wrong with my explanation?
Your explanation is correct. The first assertion is true. Connotation and denotation are key methods for describing word meanings. The second assertion is incorrect because it reverses the definitions. Connotation refers to the additional meanings or associations a word might carry beyond its literal definition. Denotation is the precise, literal meaning of a word, often found in a dictionary.
All right, the next question is the argument that ideas cannot be meaning since ideas are subjective and fleeting, whereas meaning is objective and relatively stable, was proposed by Frege. Now, can you elaborate more on what this really means? Who proposed it, and when was it proposed? In which work did he propose this statement? Yeah, go ahead and do that.
The argument you're referring to was proposed by Gottlob Frege, a prominent philosopher and logician. Frege argued that meaning should be understood as something objective and stable, rather than subjective and fleeting like ideas. This view was presented in his work Begriffsschrift, published in 1880. Frege believed that the meaning of a term is more than just a subjective thought or idea. It's tied to a precise and objective concept. For example, in his view, the meaning of the word cat is not just what comes to mind for an individual, but a stable concept that can be universally understood and analyzed.
So, what is this statement? The statement that the argument that ideas cannot be meaning since ideas are subjective and fleeting, whereas meaning is objective and relatively stable. What does this mean in simpler terms? As I understand, what it means is that meaning is objective and stable. So, meaning won't change. Meaning is going to be stable, right? But meaning is going to be stable, but ideas are something that are not stable, that change with the pace of time. So can you give me simpler a simpler explanation of this statement, and also reassure if my explanation for this statement is correct or incorrect?
Your understanding is correct. In simpler terms, the statement means that meaning is something fixed and stable. It doesn't change quickly or easily. It's a universal concept that remains consistent. On the other hand, ideas are personal and can vary from person to person. They are more fluid and can change based on one's experiences or circumstances. So, while the meaning of a word or concept is constant, the ideas people have about it can be different and shift over time.
So this was proposed by Gottlob Frege in the year 1880. And what work did he propose this in, and where did he belong to?
Gottlob Frege proposed this idea in his work Begriffsschrift, which was published in 1879. In this work, Frege introduced his formal system for logic and made significant contributions to the philosophy of language and meaning. The idea about the stability of meaning versus the subjectivity of ideas is part of his broader argument on the nature of meaning and reference.
Now, the scholar who first declared to the world that Sanskrit bore stronger relations with Latin, Greek, German was certainly William Jones. Right. So, tell me about give me a brief explanation of who he was, where did he come from, what was his official position, what major works did he do? Yeah, talk about that.
William Jones was a British philologist and judge born in 1746. He is best known for his work in comparative linguistics. Jones proposed the idea that Sanskrit, Latin, Greek, and Germanic languages share a common ancestor, which led to the development of the field of historical linguistics. He was a founding member of the Asiatic Society of Bengal, where he made significant contributions to the study of Indian languages and cultures. His most famous work is his 1786 paper titled The Third Anniversary Discourse, where he first announced the connections among these languages.
Now, the next question, written records are useful to reconstruct the grammatical structure of the past language only, or the phonetics and phonology of the past language, or the phonological and grammatical structure of the past language, or the phonetics of the past language. So, I think only the grammatical structures of the past language. Explain to me, why is that so?
Written records primarily provide insights into the grammatical structure of past languages because they capture how sentences were constructed, how words were used, and the syntax of the language. They often don't give complete information on phonetics or phonology, as the pronunciation of sounds isn't directly recorded in writing. Although written texts can sometimes offer clues about pronunciation, they are more reliable for understanding grammar and syntax rather than phonetic details.
Okay, so the next typological classification is based on written records of the language, general structural features, phonetic similarity, areal proximity. So,
Typological classification is primarily based on general structural features of languages. This means it looks at similarities and differences in language structures, such as syntax, morphology, and phonology, across different languages. Written records are more useful for historical linguistics, which involves studying languages' evolution and changes over time.
the next question is, the Proto-Dravidian ka changes to cha in Telugu language before front vowels. This change is called conditioned sound change.
Yes, that's correct. Conditioned sound change happens when a sound changes in specific phonetic environments, like how Proto-Dravidian k changes to sh in Telugu before front vowels. This type of change is predictable and happens under certain conditions.
The next question is, so who propounded the concept of subgroups within language family and compared it similar to that of branches in a tree? So it was August Schleicher.
That's right. August Schleicher introduced the idea of language families as tree-like structures, with different languages branching out from a common ancestor. This concept helped illustrate how languages are related and evolved over time.
The next question is, the concept of wave theory was proposed by Wilhelm Schmidt. Now, explain to me what wave theory is. When did he explain this concept? In what work did he explain this concept? What were his major contributions, and where did he belong to? All of that information.
Wilhelm Schmidt, an Austrian linguist, proposed the wave theory in his work, published in 1939. Wave theory suggests that language changes spread like waves from a central point or area rather than being uniformly adopted across all dialects. This theory contrasts with the earlier tree model of language change, which viewed changes as branching out from a common source. Schmidt's contributions significantly impacted historical linguistics by emphasizing the diffusion of linguistic features through communities. He was associated with the study of language contact and change, focusing on the dynamics of how language features spread geographically.
So he proposed it in which year?
Wilhelm Schmidt proposed the wave theory in 1939.
I don't think so. I read that it was proposed in the year 1972.
It seems there might be some confusion. Wilhelm Schmidt's wave theory was indeed proposed in the year 1939. If you have different information, it might be worth double checking the sources.
So, according to the wave theory, the sound changes spread like waves in a pond. So, there is a concentric point towards which the effect of the sound change is very strong. But as the waves, they go on spreading in the pond, the the effect of the effect of the sound changes loses its girth, loses its hold, so it becomes less effective as the wave spreads farther and farther. Is that true?
Yes, that's a good summary. Wilhelm Schmidt's wave theory suggests that sound changes spread outward from a central point, much like waves in a pond. The influence of the change is strongest at the center and diminishes as it moves outward. This theory explains how sound changes can affect different areas in varying degrees.
All right, so the next question is, the social motivation for change belongs to William Labov. Now, the next question is Apurina language. What word order is there in the Apurina language? Now, the word order is OSV. So, can you explain with an example what Apurina language, the word order of the Apurina language is, where is it spoken? Yeah.
The Aparina language uses the OSV, object, subject, verb, word order, which means sentences are structured with the object first, followed by the subject, and then the verb. For example, in an OSV sentence like the book John reads, the book is the object, John is the subject, and reads is the verb. The Aparina language is spoken in Brazil, particularly in the Amazon region. It's one of the indigenous languages of the country and is part of the larger Tupian language family.
All right, the next question. All South Asian language families share an unmarked SOV word order. Now, what does this really mean? Unmarked, and what does this mean?
In linguistic terms, unmarked refers to the most common or default word order used in a language. For South Asian languages, the unmarked or default word order is subject object verb, SOV, which means that in general sentences, the subject comes first, followed by the object, and then the verb. So when we say that South Asian language families share an unmarked SOV word order, it means that SOV is the typical or most natural way these languages are structured, even though variations can exist. For instance, in Hindi, you might say subject the book, object reads verb.
So, is that all that unmarked means?
No, unmarked can also refer to something that is standard or default in a linguistic system, as opposed to something that is less common or marked. In general, unmarked features are considered neutral or the baseline in language use, while marked features are seen as specific or requiring additional explanation. For example, SOV is unmarked in many South Asian languages, meaning it's the default structure, while other structures like SVO might be considered marked in those languages.
All right. The next question is, which one of the following is correct? So the first option, bilingualism could be a potential source for borrowing and a source for language change. Second, bilingualism could not be a potential source of borrowing. I think bilingualism could be a potential source for borrowing and a source for sound for language change is the correct option. What are your views on this?
Yes, you're correct. Bilingualism can indeed be a source for both borrowing and language change. When people speak multiple languages, they often borrow words, phrases, and structures from one language to another. Additionally, the contact between languages can lead to changes in grammar, pronunciation, and usage in the languages involved.